we are on our journey, and a hearty welcome. Welcome, Suzanne. You just here in time to hear my official commencement of my contribution to the 24 hours of climate activism. And the Cape Townians who have known me for some time are aware that my interest in climate activism is very new. And if you'd spoken to me in December last year, I would have demonstrated but a peripheral interest in what I'm going to be talking to you all about today. However, in January of this year, I find myself experiencing an uncharacteristic and profound feeling that I personally needed to do something about the manner in which humankind is exploiting the raw materials of this planet. I needed to play a part not only in reducing my carbon footprint, but encouraging those around me to participate in a similar mission. For the past 15 years, I have been facilitating meetings on conscious aging for seniors. And in this endeavor, I was focused on helping my cohort to maximize their individual and personal growth. What I'm currently starting to understand is how our individual health is intimately tied up with the health of the planet. And it's therefore a natural process of development for me to add the appreciation of climate change to our work of personal growth. So it was at our first meeting this year that I actually invited my granddaughter, Karen, to my meeting of conscious aging. Sybil, I think you were there at the time. And Karen shared with us her business involving the manufacture of reusable fabric bags in order to cut down on plastic bags, which were needed for regular shopping. So as a solopreneur, she was playing her part in sustaining habits of consumption. And then on March the 26th, we in South Africa were part of the COVID-19 level 5 shutdown. And this new promulgation of restrictions made me more and more aware of what is happening at this particular time in our universe. I had more time to meditate and think about what is my role, whether I really needed to live in such a large cottage, in such a beautiful senior environment, and how could I play my part and maybe cut down on my climate footprint. And then in June, I learned that I'd have the opportunity to be a participant in Al Gore's movement of climate reality. And I would become empowered and educated to play a more active part in the climate reality world. So having told you about my journey in brief, I'm now going to share my screen with you and start off with the introduction of Al Gore, who is going to welcome you to this presentation. So I've just got to now go to my slideshow, and here is Al Gore.
Hello, everyone. I'm Al Gore, and I want to thank you for joining us today for 24 Hours of Reality, Countdown to the Future. As all of you know, we're living through truly extraordinary times. And if you're like most people, you look at these challenges that we're facing now, the climate crisis getting worse, COVID-19 pandemic, structural and institutional racism, the challenges to the operations of democracy, and you ask yourself, what can we do? How do we overcome these truly existential threats that are connected, and how do we build together the sustainable future and the just and fair future that we want and deserve? Well, the presentation you're about to hear and the discussion you're about to join is about these questions. Your host is an incredible climate reality leader that I personally have worked with. And through their presentation, you'll learn the science behind the climate crisis and why it is having such a devastating impact on the ecological balance of our planet. You'll also learn how the climate crisis is connected to the COVID-19 pandemic and is connected to the broader injustices and inequities, not only in the US where I'm located, but in places all around the planet. Just as important, you'll learn that we have the solutions that.
Wait, sorry, I've done something stupid here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Al Gore. You'll also learn how the climate crisis is connected to the COVID-19 pandemic and is connected to the broader injustices and inequities, not only in the US where I'm located, but in places all around the planet. Just as important, you'll learn that we have the solutions, and you'll learn how we can work together to solve these crises, starting with a green recovery and with a just transition to clean energy and the technologies that can make our world better in every way. You'll learn what you personally can do to make a difference and to help us create the future that we want and that humanity deserves. So before I hand you back to your host, I want to say one other thing. Thank you for being a part of this global conversation. The truth of our circumstances is very clear. We have to solve the climate crisis, and we have the solutions we need today. I know that we can solve the climate crisis. We have the political will. You know it's a renewable resource, but it's really because of people like you who are ready to commit the time and energy and attention and stand up and fight for a better world. Because of you, I know that we will succeed. Thank you.
So now you've heard from Al Gore that I'm going to give you the scientific background, as well as some sort of manner in which you can participate in this journey to creating a sustainable planet. And what you see now in front of you is a photograph that was taken in December 1972 when the Apollo mission was traveling towards the moon. And what this image actually demonstrates is the interconnectivity of the planet. I recently started studying a bit of mindfulness and a bit of Buddhism, and it was in my study of Buddhist philosophy that this concept to me first emerged of the interconnectivity of all people, all fauna, all flora. And now through my studies of the planet, and of course COVID-19, this interconnectivity and the effect that each and every one of us has on each other is becoming demonstrated more and more fully. This picture is a depiction of the atmosphere that surrounds our planet. You could perhaps think of it as like the skin of an apple. And this atmosphere plays a very important role in retaining the temperature on the planet. So this slide introduces you to the basic science of global warming, which has been emerging since 1880. Basically, the energy from the sun comes to the earth in the form of light. That energy is absorbed by the earth and warms it. Some of it is trapped by the atmosphere. And that's a good thing, because otherwise our temperature would not be stable. However, since the age of industrialization, particularly during the last 50 years, the emission of too much carbon dioxide has caused more heat energy to be trapped, and hence the warming of our planet, which has caused some climate damages. I don't know how much 152 million tons of man-made global pollution really means to you. It's just a figure for me, but this picture captures quite dramatically the effect of all this carbon in our atmosphere. And on this slide, we introduced to all the various industrial and commercial activities which produce carbon, which includes our means of travel and this thawing of the permafrost and the glaciers, which are diminishing, is causing a dramatic change to the level of our oceans and resulting in many cities being in danger of rising waters, and their future is endangered. So as we've learned already, it's the fossil fuels that have started to emerge post the Second World War. And at the time of the 1950s, there were a unit of 2 metric tons, and you see that that has increased to 10 metric tons at this particular stage of our history. And this increase in temperature seems to more or less have paralleled the increase in the carbon dioxide, demonstrating very graphically our need to reduce carbons if we are going to get the global warming under control. So the 20 latest years have been the hottest on record, and the 5 hottest years, the very hottest year being 2016, unfortunately, the prognostication is that 220 is even warmer than 216, helping us to realize that the time is now, that we have all got to play our part and cooperate and do what we can to try and prevent further global warming. So it's not only the air that's warming, but it's also the seas that are warming. And because of the, sorry, that slide was not supposed to appear yet. We're still talking about the warming of the seas, which has caused cyclones, massive storms, and higher winds all around the world. Could I ask everybody to just mute themselves, because there are some stray sounds coming through? Thank you for that. And America has, even this year and in previous years, been the victim of many of these cyclones, which have also appeared in other parts of the world. Sorry. Gosh, sorry, what is this? This is a picture of a drought in Houston, Texas, and a policeman who is rescuing a couple of children. And whilst sometimes these catastrophes do bring out the best in people, we cannot continue to deal with the sort of catastrophes that are happening all over the world, not only in America, but in Asia, where trees have been destroyed. And here you see a woman battling to cross over what was once a road and is now become a flood. And the floods of this year in India mean that we have got to cope with both COVID-19 as well as victims of flood at the same time. This graphically depicts some flooding in Miami in 2015, which tends to be a regular feature of their life. And as you see, Miami is listed as one of the 10 towns which are at risk from being under the sea in 2070. Already at this stage, some of the Pacific islands are flooded by the sea, and people have had to evacuate islands, as well as, oh, somebody's not muted. So Pacific islands have been flooded, and many populations have had to move inland from coastal cities, which are already being victimized by the rising of the oceans and the glaciers, which are defrosting, melting. And it seems strange that with all this global warming and increased precipitation and flooding, that at the same time, there are actually more droughts in various parts of the world. And this shows you Brazil's riverbeds. Of course, we in Cape Town know only too well about droughts, when we ourselves were the first city in the world during 3 years of the previous decade, when our dams came very dangerously low, and we had water restrictions, as well as an increase in the price of our water. And in addition, crops, the basic crops of rice and corn and soybeans are being threatened, and their quality is tending to diminish because of the climate crises that are happening. Climate is also causing various medical emergencies. I was demonstrated in a TED talk by Cheryl Holder, which I recently viewed. And she spoke about the mnemonic that helps people to remember the sort of crises that are occurring in the field of health, with the mnemonic of heat wave. So heart and lung diseases are exacerbated, asthma is worsening, and injuries are happening in greater numbers. Of course, water and foodborne illnesses are arising. People who suffer from allergies tend to suffer more, and vector-borne diseases are spreading. The emotional stresses of climate are perhaps under the radar, but they are there and causing a tremendous amount of distress. The other problem is the diminution of all sorts of varieties of flora and fauna. And this golden toad is rapidly close to extinction, and that is in company with many other threatened species. So here is laid out for you the cost of carbon, and it causes political instability and all the things that I've already brought to your attention, which are many and various, and we need to try and use our skills to create a political and economic and social climate that's going to help to lessen the climate fatalities. So I think what I've been saying is hopefully demonstrating that we have got to change. It is the responsibility of each and every one of us to examine our carbon footprint and maybe encourage those around us to do the same. Can we change? You know, the human being has been shown to be extremely adaptable. And whilst we are reared with certain values and certain habits, the fact that during the lockdown of COVID-19, we have all changed these habits and learned to value different things has demonstrated that we can change. Will we change? That's up to each and every one of us to decide and to examine the things that we do, the things that we believe, and try and meditate on our value systems and whether we need to perhaps change our habits of consumption. In fact, the solutions are at hand. They are available. And one of the solutions is to create green energy by using the capacity of the wind to generate electricity. And what this diagram shows us, that the projections of 2010 was superseded 22 times by 2019 because we created wind farms such as these all over the world. Traveling by bus in Europe, even 15 years ago, I remember passing many of these wind farms. And again, when I was in Lesbos with Kate, who I don't know if Kate's still on the call, but Kate introduced me to Lesbos, where I saw some wind farms as well. Not only wind, but solar energy has been expanded during the last couple of decades. And in fact, there are fields of solar panels in various parts of the world that are capable of producing more than enough electricity for the populations nearby. So the world's installations of solar have increased dramatically. And even countries that are off the grid, like this country in Africa, has created its own solar panel, and in enabling the recent technologies to increase the standard of living at minimal cost. So in essence, enough solar energy reaches the earth every hour to fulfill our needs, and it's there to be harnessed. by future technologies. And hopefully in South Africa, we're going to be using solar energy to overcome the problems of Eskom going forward. We've all heard about the research that's been done to create electric cars, and hopefully they will very soon be on the market, help us to cut down on the use of petrol and the pollution that that causes. In the Paris Agreement, which took place some years ago, all the countries of the world agreed to phase down on their greenhouse gases to net zero emissions as early as the second half of the century as possible. And America has made some progress, and I'm just hoping this isn't going to be jeopardized by the forthcoming elections. And China, who's the other major polluter, has also created a large amount of solar power and cutting down on its extensive use of carbon for electricity. Here's some words which describe what we can all do with our lifestyles. We can educate ourselves, we can recycle, take shorter showers, have a more vegetarian diet, cut down on meat, reduce our food waste, and cut back on plastics of all sorts and kinds, something which each and every one of us is able to do. In our home, we can have more efficient appliances, we can have solar heat and insulate our homes better, as well as cut down on the waste in our kitchen. And of course, transport efficiency. Maybe we can use bicycles more, which will, in Holland, is certainly possible. It's good for exercise and our health. It's good for pollution. And businesses have learned during this recent cut down in air transport just how they can manage to run their businesses without taking trips. And this Zoom room, which we're using today, has done more than its share of cutting down on the amount of travel that people need for both international and local meetings. And I've got people here from America and Canada and Europe and Joburg, which is wonderful, and Israel. Almost forgot that. And we as voters need to search out politicians who are aware of the role they can play in cutting down on carbon emissions, and make sure that we do our bit to vote for the correct people into power to do this. If you've got a pencil handy, just note this link here where you can work out what your own personal carbon footprint is. And I've just put my email address there, which I'm sure you all know anyway. The first photograph in this slide is of a glacier in Greenland from 1935. And it was at that stage covering the walls of the fjord. But by the time of the second photograph, which you're viewing now, taken in 2013, a century later, that glacier had melted completely. And just to give some more ideas of the steps that we can take, we can educate ourselves, we can shop at local markets, we can change our diet. And a very important factor is accept the difficult truth that endless economic growth has got to stop. We've spoken about how transport can be lessened, can change, and help us to save. And in the home, things can be done to cut down on waste. So, can we change? The answer is yes, we can. And here's some routes that we can all take. I don't know if any of you were part of TED yesterday. TED had 5 hours, which in South Africa was from about 5 o'clock till 10 o'clock in the evening, where they did a most professional and amazing demonstration of various routes in which we can all play our part in this great mission. And they have got lots of videos and that they recommend, and there's wonderful opportunities to learn about our carbon footprint. A wonderful journalist of this Dutch newspaper of The Correspondent is Eric Holzhaus, and he is starting a new periodical which starts in September, and he writes the most brilliant, readable and accessible articles on helping us to play our part for changes in the climate. Billionaires won't like me because they should be a thing of the past. And in fact, this is a recent article also from The Correspondent from this month, which is written by Jansen Hickel. And he states that the rich, and we know this, that the richest 1% of humanity are responsible for 100 times more carbon emissions than the poorest half. We've been told for decades that the answer to closing the inequality gap and improving well-being for the other 99% is continuous economic growth. But this isn't true, and it has to end. A rising GDP goes in hand with increased ecological destruction, which decreases human well-being across the board. And when the gross domestic product continues to rise, it is not distributed equally. The richest 5 capture almost half of this increase. We can improve our well-being and survive the 21st century on this earth by introducing policies that redistribute our existing wealth. And from a maximum wage policy to a tax on excessive wealth, everything should be on the table because our planets cannot survive our billionaires and our Mark Zuckerbergs and our Amazon guy whose name I can't, Ted Bezos, have got to play their part because they can really assist in this mission. So use your voice, use your vote, use your choices, and speak truth to power like the world depends on it. It really does. And so that ends my slide. And I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to hopefully share with you some concluding comments. Let's see if I can find my concluding comments. Here they are. So presently, we are facing an unprecedented series of challenges. The current global pandemic has impacted each and every one of us. There's a climate crisis manifested by the present raging fires still burning in California and the floods and droughts and hurricanes which I've already spoken about. There's an awareness of racial injustice following the death of George Floyd, which has made people aware all around the world of the present inequalities between different population groups. Our everyday life has been transformed and has presented us with a once-in-a-generation opportunity to improve the lifestyle of all, and this chance must not be squandered. As I've mentioned in my introductory comments, I've been busy trying to live the best life possible and plan to continue on this pathway. And whilst in the past, Danny, you're not muted. This has involved the study of emotional resilience in my facilitations, and I've looked at spiritual growth, the maintenance of cognitive reserve, the nurturing of our health and physical fitness. And an additional element is going to be added, and that is how we can reduce our carbon footprint as well as the carbon on the planet. And one of the healthiest personality attributes of a senior is his or her ability to be curious, remain curious, and develop new habits and keep up with the present technology. So at this critical existential moment in time, we need to be taking an interest and performing an active role in the future health of our planet, whilst we enhance our memory and learn about the new developments, and simultaneously our personal development and growth will be enhanced. So I hope that you're going to stay with me on this journey of enhancing your curiosity. And during the last 6 months during lockdown, I've developed my skills in the Zoom room, which has given me the opportunity to learn all this new stuff about the climate. And I'm hoping that going forward, you may be joining me in pursuing this endeavor together. And so that ends my formal presentation, and I'm going to open my chat and ask you to make comments in the chat, or otherwise just put up your hand, ask your questions, and let's see if we can have a little conversation. Maybe I can fill in some areas where you need some extra expertise. And if I'm not able to answer your question, I will find out the answer and let you know henceforth. So who would like to unmute themselves and ask me a question and put me on the spot? I'm waiting for the challenge.
I'll start, Grace, not so much with a question, but I'm struck by how I feel, and Sybil and Grace know this. I've been in a few groups with them in South Africa now, and it's my new way of traveling. I don't need an airplane now. I tell my husband, instead of saying yeah, I'm saying yeah.
Lovely.
I feel the culture. I feel the accents of people, and the stories of people, which is that's the reason I travel. And I think that it's just a new way of looking at that now. This is how we travel, and how broadening it is, in the same way as physically getting on the plane and leaving that carbon footprint. So wonderful to see Amsterdam here, and Israel, and all the places we talk about right now in real time, even though it's a lot earlier here than it is where you are. Here I am sipping coffee because it's early morning, and but we're all here together. It's amazing, and that's what I look at as inspiration for how we can change things and not lose a bit of the enrichment that we had before.
Yes, Mary, well, thank you for that. And can I please endorse your sentiments from my side? Mary met me in a Zoom room belonging to George Kinder 4 or 5 months ago, and she reached out to me, and we've become friends. You know, in the old days, you had pen pals, but today I've got Zooming pals, and Mary has enriched my life tremendously. Susan, you've got to tell us how I met you as well. Come on, Suzanne.
Yeah, so we
Can we,
were
can we
actually,
see you, Suzanne?
yep, I'm on my treadmill desk, so I bounce a lot.
Okay.
Let's see if this works. Hold on.
Be nice to see you.
You
Well
see
done,
me?
well done, well done. You
It's,
are a multitasker, Suzanne.
yeah,
That is
I
wonderful.
walk,
And
I walk about 13 miles a day on my treadmill desk, so yeah.
wonderful, wonderful. You set a wonderful example, and you're giving me an idea. Where did we meet, Suzanne?
We met at it was like a TED circle.
Oh, it was a TED Circle, right, that's
And
of
I
course.
just,
Yeah.
I was just immediately thought Grace was amazing, and we've started to talk, and we're going to implement a international art project between the U.S. and South Africa with girls, and they're each going to make a little patch, a little. It's going to be
Suzanne,
magazines.
you must tell them that they're underprivileged girls. We're not working
Yes,
for the
yeah.
privileged.
Yeah, no, for us, it'll be Latinx and Black African American girls, mostly in some of the poorest parts of Indianapolis. And then in South Africa, a diverse group of girls. And actually, Grace, I just found out we may be able to get a group in Mexico too.
Oh my
Another school,
goodness,
which would be cool too. So we really want them to talk about the future that they want from a climate perspective, from a racial equity perspective, and create an inspirational type of an artwork. So very fun, and that's all just because, you know, Grace gets things done, right?
I guess
And we're gonna get Mishka, I
yes,
saw her mom on the line here. We're gonna get Mishka involved somehow, your
yes,
granddaughter.
definitely.
Yeah, that'll be great.
We're not letting the family off. Thanks for your input, Suzanne. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
I'm gonna go off just because I make some people dizzy if they watch me too much, you know.
We'll let you close your camera, Suzanne. Thank you for your contribution. I look forward to our next gathering. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, Marion, do you want to tell the crowd where I met you?
Hi, I'm Marion. So Grace came to see me for physiotherapy, and I was absolutely taken how she looks after her, you know, the physical aspect, which helps, of course, the mental, you know, your mental health as well as your cognitive reserve, as she calls it. She's very inspirational, and yeah, I'm very amazed at how you've put this all together. Well done, Grace.
Well, thank you, Marion.
I'm also very interested in climate change. My daughter's doing economics, and she was actually very involved with working in work. You know, with work. Well, she's still young. She's working with calculating the carbon calculator of different companies, which is done on an annual basis. So I'm very, you know, from a young person's point of view and from your point of view, I think there's a lot we can all do, and it's very inspiring.
Your daughter, did she watch the whole thing? I saw her at the beginning.
And no, she just popped in, but I would I would love you to meet her.
We'll make
because
a plan.
she's
We'll
on the
make
forefront of studying and learning all about this.
Well, you know what my next project is? I mean, with Suzanne, actually, we've got what I'm calling an intergenerational project, because we're working with the school kids and with her and with me. So, you know, multi-generational, international, you know, make it diverse, and I'm there to be part of it.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Marion.
Grace, can
Hang on.
I say something?
Peter, you're certainly allowed to say something. You've been.
I think I've just popped in front of Felicity, though. I'm happy
Okay,
to
well,
wait for Felicity.
Felicity, do you want to say something?
No, I don't think it's. Thank you.
Okay. Grace, I wanted to say it's a really helpful slide presentation and I would love to show my granddaughters, because they're the ones that are going to inherit this world. And I wondered, would you be able to send the recording of your input to us?
Peter, of course I can. The other thing I suppose I should be doing, I mean, Fazana is my climate reality partner, and she's a very experienced in this thing. So with pleasure, I could let you have a copy of the recording. Alternatively, I would like to maybe modify the presentation a little bit for your children's age group, and maybe present it at their school, because I mean, that's what it's all about.
I've got very bright granddaughters. They're 11 and 9 and they're going on 20. So, you know.
Well, that's the right age and stage. I mean, 11 and 9, they do amazing things, the kids these days. They're so sophisticated because they've been around the world. Well, we can negotiate.
I really appreciated the presentation and the kind of warning that, you know, we get captured by politicians and we get captured by political events. And there are, of course, the natural disasters and the effects of climate change around us all the time. And I think at a psychological or existential level, we are in a crisis of hope and a sense of purpose for the future. I was very moved last night watching Richard Attenborough on The Life of the Planet, Death or Regrowth. And I noticed, you know, the documentary starts with him in Chernobyl, and it's a deserted ghost town because, of course, of the disaster there. And in fact, he's walking around trees because the forest has reclaimed the land and has reclaimed the devastation in that area. And I thought that was such a powerful symbol by which the documentary started and ended. And one of his main theses is that we're in the trouble we're in because we've destroyed the wild, and that we need somehow to recover the sense of the wild and to allow the wild. You know, so he talks about the deforestation and the devastation that's caused. And the other thing, of course, which is a little less popular, but I think is as important, is I've got a growing number of vegan friends who think that as long as we go on eating meat, you know, we are part of this devastation on the earth. And of course, that's a different subject, but I mean, it also questions about sustainability. If we have a more plant-based diet, we maybe, you know, also contribute to the process of addressing climate change. So, I mean, his thesis is that we're on the edge of the sixth extinction. And of course, when you hear something like that, you think, well, what is my little bit going to make any difference? But in a sense, we've got to be careful to fall into the despair of thinking that we don't make a difference, because in fact, we are called to make a difference. So, you know, thank you for your presentation. And I think there's just so much to explore. And I wish that these topics were actually much more readily debated on the table of the politicians in the world than, you know, than actually what we have to listen to, because there was a question in the Biden, not the Biden, the Kamala Harris and Pence debate, which I thought was very moving, and I think neither of the candidates answered it properly. It was the last question put to the candidates by a child, and she was talking about, you know, what kind of future do we look forward to whenever we look at the television screens, we just see these endless arguments and one person trying to outsmart the other. And so I thought it was a profound question, and I didn't think either of the politicians answered wisely enough to that question, because that's the issue really. What is the world we're leaving for our children? It's not going to be affecting us in our time, but the impact of what you've described is quite unthinkable, actually, in terms of what could be ahead in the next 20 years. So sorry, that's a long oration, but
Thank you for your input. You make a lot of valuable points. And yeah, I mean, I didn't emphasize the vegetarianism or the veganism particularly, but that's a good point. And you made a number of valuable points. And Peter, you know, it's going to be the top of the political agenda for the next decade, I promise you. And it's going to be the main topic of conversation at the World Economic Forum in January. I don't know if you're aware that the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum, to which heads of state and heads of businesses are usually invited, this year they're going to invite the leaders in the climate world of all generations, because as you've mentioned, it's the youngsters who are going to be suffering, and they're going to be taking the lead. And I think that our generation is going to learn a lot from them. And personally, I see them as becoming the political leaders within the next decade or so, because the thinking of our generation is totally outmoded. And, you know, at the end, I also brought in the, you know, a couple of things which, when I started talking about 6 months ago, people thought were totally unfeasible, but they're not. And these super duper millionaires have got to have their wealth used for the good of humankind. And we've got to think of a more equitable manner in which to pay people at different levels of the employment structure. And, you know, within any business, I mean, I've also heard recently they say that in a big business, they make a rule that the top earners cannot earn more than 6 times as much as the lowest earners. And that was considered totally unfeasible. But Mary, what do you think about that? Do you think that's becoming a feasible possibility?
Well, when we look, I think right now it's become obscene in the United States, where we have the salaries of the CEOs 287 times that of the average worker in their company. So 6 times, you're saying, Grace? 6 times the average?
Well, that's what I read, you know, that's what I read.
That quite a goal.
It's a bit idealistic, but, you know, we've got to work on some sort of idealism, because this emphasis on individualism and...
Lister, if you are wanting to say...
Mute yourself, Danny.
Sorry.
Great. My daughter, I just want something very interesting that she's involved with. She just wants to quickly tell everybody.
So I've been working on...
Tell us your name, please.
My name's Nicola.
Hello, Nicola. Welcome to the forum.
Thank you. So I've been working on, it's called, if you look it up, it's quite interesting, called the Vienna Energy Forum. So it's happening next year in 2021.
So hang on, which enemy forum? I missed that word.
Vienna Energy
Vienna.
Forum.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes.
So we've been looking at countries. So a lot of countries now with their COVID recovery are putting in, it's kind of like we're going to build it back better and build more sustainable and greener ways of being, especially, so we're focusing on industry, and then there's also a food, so agro-processing, all that sort of thing. And it's all about, you know, things being sustainable. And for my thesis, I'm writing, it's going to be looking at sectors that
Looking at what? Looking at?
Sectors, so different industry sectors in South
Oh,
Africa.
sectors. Sorry, I didn't get that word. Looking at sectors.
That are high, like high labor intensive, so hire a lot of people, but low in carbon. So to try and capitalize on that sustainability. So I definitely, I mean,
There's a lot
there's a lot happening.
Well, thank you very much for your input. And I hope to be able to follow up with you going forward, and we'll see how we can spread the word amongst the different generations and make this an intergenerational initiative. And good luck with your thesis. What grade are you in at the moment?
So I'm doing masters.
Oh, you're already such a big, you're very sophisticated.
Yeah, I'm 24.
Oh, you look so youthful. You look so useful. Oh, so you're doing a master's in what is your,
economics.
sorry?
Developmental economics.
Oh, developmental economics. Oh, well, that's amazing. So Nicola, thank you for introducing yourself and adding a wonderful dimension to the discussion. And I hope we'll meet some more going forward.
Thank you.
Hazel, what are you doing in Israel about carbon footprints?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know what we're doing about carbon footprints, but I do know what we are doing about water recycling. And 85% of Israeli water is coming from desalinization, because it's an expensive way, but it's a very good way of promoting green and vegetation farming. And 55% of our water is also coming from recycling. So I think that's very, I think it's a very impressive. I think it's very impressive, because Israel today is the absolute forerunner in desalinization and in the recycling of water. And the water is so well recycled that you can actually drink it. And although I must say that I don't, because I like to have my water ultra clean, but in fact you can drink it, and the recycled water is used in agriculture, is used everywhere. And I think that for poor countries, I know South Africa, Israel offered to help South Africa with a desalinization plant, and it wasn't well received. But perhaps with things changing the way they are now in the Middle East, perhaps there will be more interest in Israel's assistance with desalinization and with recycling. And anyway, this was very interesting, Grace. I must say, I'm delighted that I joined, and thank you for sending me the link. And I'm very interested in what your group has had to say. I'm hoping that I'll be able to continue this.
Thanks, Hazel. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I'm very aware that the politics, unfortunately, is such that South Africa is not able to benefit from the expertise of the Israelis in desalinization. A great, great pity. Thanks for sharing that with us. Ellie, tell us something. I know that are you frightened? Where is Ellie? He's disappeared.
I'm here.
Oh, you're there, Ellie. Yeah. What about the glaciers and the dikes in Holland? And are you concerned about that sort of thing?
Yeah, for sure. So I just wanted to mention that actually the way that I got to know about your blog was by reading some articles in The Correspondent, which, by the way, for everyone's benefit, it's a wonderful Dutch-based journalism platform with the motto of unbreaking news. So they're not concerned with, bringing the latest scoop, but rather talking about the bigger stories that often are not portrayed in the.
It's a wonderful publication. I love it.
And they indeed cover in-depth topics of climate change. And there was a comment left by Grace that's how I actually found the blog, and then I started following the blog. So recently in the correspondent, there was an interesting article talking about the Dutch approach to rising sea levels. And obviously this is a problem that the Netherlands is facing.
Yeah. I think that's why I brought it up, because I read it in the correspondence, and yes.
And indeed, this is something that the Netherlands has been concerned with for a long time. This is not a new issue, because if nothing is done, then half of the Netherlands is already under sea level. So this is something that must be addressed constantly and continuously, and resources and attention needs to be devoted to it. But it's also an example how a society can work together to tackle big issues that require a lot of investment and a lot of commitment. And it's not an option or nice to have. This is something that is absolutely crucial for the future of the country.
Yes, absolutely. Ellie, can I ask you a very personal question? What is your professional background?
I work in IT. So actually, I'm originally from Israel. My background is in IT. I work with technology, but I have a great interest in environmental issues and climate change. And actually, I heard Al Gore speak a couple of years ago in a conference that I attended in the States. And he's been doing a lot of great work and spreading the message of the urgency and talking about this. And it's wonderful initiative now that people around the world get to talk in groups. So I really like the aspect of with all the challenges that COVID brought into our life, it also brought some opportunities of people to work together. From
Ellie, do me a favor, put your email address in the chat in case I want so that I can keep in touch with you.
So I just also wanted to add that the other thing I liked about today's meeting is indeed the intergenerational aspect. It's really important that we work together, and it doesn't matter that we come from different countries or that we belong to different generations. It's the power of doing things together for the greater good.
Absolutely. And that's what is the interest of this. It's actually totally all embracing. It covers the sciences, the humanities, the philosophy, the psychology, and the generations. It's got everything, and politics, science, sociology. It's just an all-embracing area of knowledge. And if one takes an interest in it, I don't think there's any better way of exercising one's mind.
For sure.
Thank you for that, Ellie. Fazana, I need to have your input now.
Well, I want to say thank you for your presentation and your empathy and care for the environment absolutely comes through, and you have absolutely infected the people around you with your enthusiasm, and everyone's playing a part. So you have started this chain of sustainability, and it shows. It just comes through.
Well, thank you. Fazana can take some credit because she reached out to me, and we've had a number of conversations, and her husband was even brought into the issue to deal with some technical problems. And none of you would be here if it wasn't for Fazana. So thank you for the part and the role that you've played.
Thank you.
Come on, Garby, let's hear from you. Unmute, Garby.
Yes, no. I just want to congratulate you. I think this is wonderful. I keep saying the COVID came because we've made such a mess of this planet.
You're
and
right.
Something's got to be. So I'm very happy that at long last, that you and others are realizing it. The older generation don't see it at all. I'm part of that, unfortunately, and it upsets me. But I think they'll come to the youngsters will understand, and they're going to make a change. It'll be hard for us, but they will understand and they'll realize they have to do it. I wish you could do this so that my family in America can see this.
We can make a plan. Today we can boer maak a plan, you know that. Thanks, Garby, for being here.
Okay, and thank you very much. I'm so happy that I heard it all. I made notes, but honestly, oh, I hope I can read them. Thank you, Grace. It was a pleasure, as usual. You've come up with something tops. Okay.
Thanks, Garby, for
Thank you
sharing. Danny,
very
do you want
much.
to give your mother an accolade or not? What's your attitude to climate change, Danny? What are you doing in the clothing business? Unmute yourself now.
Firstly, the accolade, you did amazingly. I'm very proud to have you as a mother.
Thank you.
I'm trying to recycle, we have a lot of offcuts as a process of manufacture, and I'm trying to recycle. In fact, funnily enough, I just read an article about Sweden, H&M, who have a special offer where people can bring their old sweatshirts and their old garments, and they we create them into new. So I'm thinking, and that was just now actually, of ways where customers can return items and we can recycle them. So it's not just about making new, but also, and I made a pledge to myself to not buy any new garments at all. I've got enough, it's just a vanity. And it feels really good. So you can watch this space. I'm on record now, lots of witnesses.
Well done for making your commitment, Danny.
Yeah.
I'm not okay, thanks. Joy and Felicity, I think you, the two people in this group who haven't said anything, and I'm not going to force you to, but maybe you'd like to just, hi Mishka, did you enjoy it, Mishka?
Oh, yeah.
Good, thank you. Thank you, well done, well done. Joy, you're going to put in your word? Joy, now I must just tell you that Joy is in Cape Town, but I've never met her. I recruited some people to listen to TED videos, and Joy is one of the people who signed up, and she's been a very inspiring and enthusiastic member of the group. Do you want to unmute yourself, Joy?
Ah, there we go. I thought I had. Okay. Grace, thank you very much for that presentation. You really, did inspire me this time to stay current with the internet and, learn all that there is to know about Zooms and chat rooms and so on, and to, grow with it. So that really hit me this time too. And then you did mention the group that you were forming, Grace, to discuss these matters. And
yes, I did. I didn't push it now. What I thought I'd do is, I know who was here, and I thought I'll just consolidate and send you a follow-up letter about how to go forward. Somehow, yeah. So my idea is to gather together a group of people who will have regular meetings to learn more. And that's why I actually showed you those couple of slides, the one about the correspondent, which I see Ellie has put now into the chat as well. And this guy, Eric Holtzhaus, he's actually, I've just ordered his book in Kindle, and he's such a brilliant correspondent. And I thought we'll read something together and discuss it and inspire each other. So it can be a general interest and activity group. And I don't know where it will go, but maybe with Marion's daughter and the academics. Oh, Fazan is another academic, and she's also written books. So thanks for reminding me, Joy, about that and giving me the opportunity to tell people you're not getting off the hook when we close the Zoom room today.
I just wanted to add too, as far as buying new clothing and everything, my daughter is currently with her family in Seattle, living in Seattle. And the last twice I've gone through there, we've gone thrift shopping. And being a vegan myself, you know, I don't buy woolen garments new and so on. I've got one from New Zealand, by the way, that I got in New Zealand last year, because of course I don't buy new wool and new leather and so on. So it's been a source of reusing some other people's leather boots and woolen jerseys, because I am on the skinny side being a vegan and you know, do get cold. So I found that a very good way of clothing myself.
Yeah, well, those are some lovely practical ideas. Thank you for that. Felicity, must I encourage you to say your few words? We can't.
Can you hear me?
I can hear
can't see.
you, but
Okay.
I can't see you.
I'm going to throw a spanner in the works.
Oh, can I just breathe deeply before you do that?
And I'm not totally convinced that we are going through climate change.
Yeah, Felicity, carry on.
No, I just want you, that's just a spanner in the works.
You've got to substantiate it, you know, you can't.
Yeah. Now, I think everything that we're going through now has happened before. Okay. You know, if you go through history and you look hundreds of years ago, all these things were happening before. And so this isn't new. You know, glaciers melting and floods and... Okay. Okay. So the other thing I want to say too, Grace, is that I don't know if you remember, about at least 20 years ago, we used to talk about this sort of thing around the dinner table. And everybody laughed at me when I used to get upset when people made a fire on the trails when we walked in the mountains and collected driftwood. Do you remember that?
Yes, I know.
And I was anti these fires because we were burning the wood that killed the little insects in the wood.
Yeah, well, you've got a very specific orientation and idiosyncrasies on these matters, Felicity, I know. And it's a very interesting perspective. Yeah.
But the other thing I also want to know, Grace, is if we don't have people in the world with money, how are we going to pay workers? How are we going to look after the poor if they're no rich to give them that money?
Come on, you're a mathematician. You don't have to have an enormous discrepancy like there is today.
No, they're not saying that. You say we mustn't have the billionaires and the millionaires, but a lot of them do give money to the poor. They do build schools and they do.
Of course they do. They do.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, but I did say I was going to throw a spanner in the works.
Yeah, thank you. Makes it interesting. Well done. Well done.
Thanks, Grace. It's been very nice. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So I just want to say thank you for your presence. Thank you for the lively discussion. And any post ideas that you have, let me know. And I just have to sort of consolidate in my mind what the potential is for a group going forward. But, you know, as Ellie says, even if we just get together and I send you an article of from the correspondent, or we watch, there's so many beautiful TED films on different aspects of this topic. And it makes for a good discussion, and out of it might come some ideas about what we can do or what influences we can have in the greater scheme of things. So
thank you, Grace.
Thank you, everybody. So without any further ado, unless anybody's got a closing comment, I will say it's been wonderful sharing with people all around the world. Each and every one of you have made a valuable contribution to the discussion. Thanks for your time and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you,
Well
everyone.
done.
Thank you,
Well
Grace.
done. Well done.
Well done, Grace. Well done.
Okay, all the best. And I hope we
Okay.
all
Bye, Garvey.
Bye, love.
That's the ball.
Bye. Thank you, Grace.
Thank
Well
you.
done. Well done.
Danny?